Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, as Australians vote, someone they can't even elect is stealing the headlines.
The Australian election is shaping up as a battle between the two major parties, a coalition of almost everybody versus Donald Trump.
With candidates trying to distance themselves from the U.S. president, how much will he affect the outcome? I'm Natasha Del Toro, and this is The Take. I understand it is almost 1 a.m. where you are. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 1:45 here in Sydney, and we're a little bit more than 24 hours out from Election Day.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us at this ungodly hour. If you start to nod off and start babbling nonsense, we'll forgive you for
Let
that.
me know if that happens.
We will let you know. Impressive that you're up at this hour and making sense.
My name's Tom McIlroy. I'm the Chief Political Correspondent for Guardian Australia. I'm usually based at Parliament House in Canberra, the national capital, but for the last couple of days of the election campaign, I'm here in Sydney.
Great. And I imagine you haven't been getting a lot of sleep because you've been covering this election all the way through. So you're in the final hour now. So the crunch time is here. Election day is Saturday. What's the vibe on the ground right now in Australia?
It's an interesting vibe. We have had a 5-week campaign, and as you say, we're down to the wire. I think the polls are suggesting that the government is on track to be re-elected, and a lot of people have already voted. You're allowed to vote early in Australian elections. So I think some people are starting to check out of the process. They've probably had enough of the politicians over the recent weeks. But for the parties, there's a last push and a real throw everything at it kind of approach for these last couple of days.
Sure. It's 5-week campaign. Is that the length of the campaigns there in Australia?
Sometimes they're longer, but the minimum under the rules is 33 days, and this one's sticking pretty close to 33 days.
That sounds great. Maybe we could borrow something from the Australian system. Let's talk a little bit about the main candidates in this election. Tom, maybe you could tell me who are they as people and how are they perceived by the Australian public?
Sure. Well, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is running for a second term in office. He was elected in 2022. He's the leader of the Labor Party, the centre-left party. He is from Sydney, a guy from humble origins. He likes to talk about growing up with a single mum and relying on free public education and free healthcare here in Australia.
She went back to Australia, had me, made the courageous decision in 1963 to be a single mother and to raise me.
His main opponent is Peter Dutton, who is the opposition leader. He's the leader of the Liberal Party, the centre-right party, and they operate in coalition with a smaller party called the Nationals. Dutton is a Queenslander and a former police officer. He's been in Parliament for nearly 30 years, so he's a veteran politician like Anthony Albanese. And he has served in a couple of senior ministries in the previous Conservative government. He was the Minister for Defence and for Home Affairs and Immigration. And he's viewed as something of a hard man and a kind of tough presence in Australian politics.
I want to make sure that we can keep Australians safe. I want to keep our country safe. I want to reduce crime in local communities.
So both of these candidates have been around in politics in Australia for quite a while now. So they're kind of known entities at this point. And just for our viewers that are less familiar, when you say Liberal in Australia, that's actually referring to the Conservative Party. Now, you've been following these guys. Do you have any interesting anecdotes from them on the campaign trail?
Yeah, in the months leading up to the campaign starting officially, it looked like the Conservative Party were in a stronger position. There was a shift just before the campaign got underway. Anthony Albanese appeared confident and energetic. He's not the most charismatic guy. He isn't the best communicator. He's not flashy. He's kind of straightforward and a bit workmanlike. And all of a sudden we saw a bit more pep and a bit more optimism in the way he was presenting himself.
I enjoy it. I get a buzz out of it, and the adrenaline kicks in, and you just keep going.
And conversely, Peter Dutton, the opposition leader, who had been expected to be a stronger campaign presence and perhaps to have a bit more momentum going in, had some bad luck with events around the campaign and the momentum fell away a little bit. And he's been more wooden and I think less confident in his public appearances.
Now, we've been responsible in relation to the PBO work that we've done, in relation to the costings otherwise, and all of that will be presented today in accordance with the rules.
And I know Australians have a funny habit of giving people nicknames, of shortening people's names. Albanese's nickname is what?
Albo, yeah, he's called Albo.
Get out of here, Albo.
He likes that. He's adopted that himself.
Okay. Does Peter Dutton have a nickname?
Not quite the same. There's a couple of kind of negative phrases used to describe him. I mean, we might call him Dutto. It doesn't have quite the same ring as Albo. No. Some of his critics compare him to a potato, and he's sometimes known as Mr. Potato Head.
Peter, potato head, you are a team of trouble.
He's got a big round face.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know if I'd like to be called Mr. Potato Head.
The potato thing is really taken off, right?
This is the potato head stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to unpack how you feel about all that and what do your children make of it?
Well, you develop a pretty thick skin, but you read it and you think, well, it's not very nice.
So let's talk about the issues that these guys are running on. You know, what are the main issues that are on people's minds in Australia right now?
The main issue for months and years coming into this campaign and really front of mind for voters has been cost of living. Like lots of other places in the world, households have been doing it pretty tough. There's been...
Join the club.
Yeah. Australia's had a strong economy in the past couple of decades and it's remained pretty strong, but we have been hit with inflation. There have been rising interest rates for home mortgages, supermarket prices, energy prices, all through the roof like everywhere else. So yeah, cost of living is the main issue. The presence of Donald Trump has been fascinating. We don't usually talk that much about foreign affairs in our domestic elections here in Australia, but the tariff regime that the White House has been implementing and the destabilisation that has come from Trump's return to the White House have really played into our politics. One challenge for Peter Dutton has been that he's being described by his critics as too similar to Trump in temperament, a bit erratic, a bit unpredictable. And Labor have also worked hard to suggest that the Conservatives would have a Trump-like agenda if they win the election, sacking public servants in Canberra, cutting some government services, pushing a kind of Doge-like agenda in reducing the size of the bureaucracy.
I see. So being associated with Trump has not been favorable for Dutton, which reminds me a little bit of this recent election in Canada. Mark Carney won, and one of the reasons was because Pierre Poilievre was being compared to Trump quite a lot. And you're saying that is also the case with Peter Dutton? Yeah,
obviously we're a bit more removed, being in the Southern Hemisphere. But the United States is one of our big trading partners, our big security partner as well. Yeah, the comparisons that Labor have made between Peter Dutton and Trump have been negative and difficult for him to throw off. He's been forced to say that he won't act like Trump, that he doesn't know Trump well. But they've definitely stuck, and I think they're registering with voters that people are a bit uncomfortable with the possibility of Trump politics here.
Well, at least Trump is not threatening to annex Australia, so I know that has been a major difference. But it's interesting. So so Trump is kind of looming large in this election. It's often been said that Trump sort of takes the air out of the room, but it sounds like he's taking the air out of the world right now when it comes to elections. Let's get into that a little bit more. You're saying that people have compared Peter Dutton to Trump, and he has kind of gotten into the culture war stuff lately. He's criticized Aboriginal welcoming ceremonies, saying that they are overdone. He's attacked, quote, wokeness in schools.
I want young Australians who are going to school to get the best education they can. I don't want them indoctrinated according to the views of the lecturer at university or in relation to the views of the particular teacher. I want our kids to be taught according to community beliefs and standards.
Another thing is he's saying he's going to restrict immigration, which is, I know a hot button topic for a lot of people. And he's going after the public service with plans to cut government jobs.
Peter Dutton has promised to slash 36,000 jobs from our bloated public service, very similar to what Elon Musk is doing in the US.
But if that Trumpian approach was helping him with some voters at a certain point in time, you're saying that that's really kind of taken a turn in recent weeks. Maybe walk us through the arc of how Trump has played a role in this election.
Yeah, I think the arc starts with the meeting in the Oval Office with the Ukrainian president. I think Australians yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I think Australians saw Trump's unorthodox approach and quite aggressive approach. Our news cycle is really dominated by US politics sometimes, and Trump has been, front of newspapers and broadcasts down here. Then the tariff regime and the uncertainty that has over the international economy really registered with people. And I think Albanese and Labor did a better job of responding to that.
I've said no. I said that yesterday. I say that today. We're consistent. Tariffs are a tax on Australian consumers and people who buy products. That is our view. We stand very clearly in favour of free and fair trade. We have put positions to the United States. We'll continue to do so.
Dutton said that he would be able to negotiate a better deal from Australia with Trump if he won the election. The government moved pretty quickly to ridicule that suggestion. And on the other side of the coin, as you describe, these policy areas that are a bit reminiscent of MAGA Trump politics, like attacking the media and talking about sacking bureaucrats, cutting government spending. Some of these things don't quite have the same resonance in Australia. People broadly like the services that they get from government. And when Labor's been able to say that school education or health care for your family could be at risk under Dutton and a coalition government, I think that's registered well and more than Dutton expected.
More with Tom after the break. Before we continue today's show, I wanted to talk to you about Hindsight, a dramatized history show from Al Jazeera podcast. We have a season 7 beginning on Wednesday, May 7th. But in the meantime, you can catch up with season 6 right here on the Al Jazeera YouTube podcast tab and listen to all the other seasons wherever you get your podcasts. Here's a preview of season 7.
I want to sing, Hassan. That's all I want.
Hindsight, a dramatized history podcast from Al Jazeera.
Have you seen what the British have done? They have stabbed us in the back.
I'm your narrator, Charles Dance. In season 7, we meet people from the Arab world, including dynastic leaders.
I was in my early 20s and running Egypt.
Under my rule, Muslims will retake our lands from foreign invaders.
And artists, like the famed French-Algerian writer Albert Camus.
There is something deeply absurd about the search for meaning.
At that moment, I was no longer Amal al-Atrash. I became Asmahan.
Egypt's sisters in crime.
We were mere spectators who provided food and drinks.
We're not killers.
You've heard of them.
My name is pronounced Salah ad-Din.
I am Shagarat ad-Dur, Sultana of Egypt.
Now it's time to hear from them.
You may call me Faisal.
My name is Raya Ali Hammam.
I am Skin Ali Hammam.
Hindsight, a dramatized history podcast from Al Jazeera. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Tom, talking about Trump again, would you say because of his association with Dutton and the way that this is impacting Dutton's poll numbers, maybe, is he kind of the third candidate in this election?
I think it's a great framing for him. He's the elephant in the room. We're talking about him every day. I think it's kind of very Trumpy, isn't it, that he's a big presence in even things that have not much to do with him. He's definitely the third candidate. They're both trying to run against him. I think the polling shows something like 7 in 10 Australians think that Trump's decisions will have a negative impact on them financially. A third of voters are saying that they're less likely to vote for the opposition because of Trump's presence in the debate. That those numbers really show up the political difficulty that Peter Dutton's having. And I think if Labor do win, it's going to be some of that sentiment showing up on election day.
And of course, the United States was at least Australia's biggest ally. These politicians may want to distance themselves from Trump, but they kind of had to tread lightly here, no?
Yeah, they definitely have. I think the Prime Minister's done a good job in that. I know today in his press conference, he mentioned alternatives elsewhere in the world. He wouldn't even mention America specifically, but he was talking about Trump without saying his name. I think he's got an eye to governing after the election and trying to maintain good relationships with Trump, knowing that he can be erratic. If you criticise him, he can punch back pretty hard.
Right, and sometimes people can face retribution in those cases. So both of these candidates are kind of having to tread sort of a fine line where they're distancing themselves from Trump, but at the same time understanding that whoever actually wins is going to have to work with President Trump.
Absolutely. One area that they're going to work in is the tariffs that we've already discussed. But equally, we've got an agreement with the United States and the United Kingdom for nuclear submarines and for sharing of technology and defence spending called Orcus. And this is a huge deal. It's a very expensive thing for Australia. It's forward-looking defence policy. Both sides have signed up to it, and they want to keep Trump at the table for that deal. And there was some concern that he would move to end the AUKUS agreement. Both sides would prefer that doesn't happen.
And I know that the Australian economy has been growing pretty slowly recently. Have the tariffs had a major impact on Australia so far?
Not yet. We haven't seen economic data that suggests that. We're an exporting country, and the effect could come through the Chinese economy. We sell a lot to China, including fossil fuels and iron ore, things like that. And if the Chinese economy is disrupted by the US tariffs, that could be bad for us. There's also a range of Australian businesses who export to the United States, and they're concerned about it as well.
So even if the tariffs haven't had much of an effect yet, is it the posturing of Trump then that's rankled Australians, that's hurting Dutton in the end?
I think that's right. We've since the Second World War, made a big effort to be very close to the United States in foreign policy. We've fought alongside the United States in various conflicts. I think some Australians will feel shortchanged if the United States starts treating Australia poorly after so long with such close relations.
So, Tom, we've joked that Trump is kind of this, he's the elephant in the room. He's the third candidate in this election. But of course, Australia has a parliamentary system. So there are other parties and candidates involved between the main two. I know the Green Party has polled at over 10% in 4 of the last 5 federal elections. And there's also a new movement that's very interesting that's known as the Teals, which is a largely female group of candidates. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about these groups and how they might play into the election, especially since it doesn't seem like a lot of people are too excited about the 2 main candidates.
Yeah, that's right. Neither is animating voters hugely. About 30% of voters in Australia in recent elections will vote for candidates other than from the main parties. That's a real shift in the last couple of decades in Australia. The Green Party is the biggest party on what we call the crossbench, the section of parliament for independent members and minor party members. There are also some long-term independents, and they won seats primarily from Conservative men, and their presence in the parliament makes it more difficult for the Conservative parties to form government. They need those seats in their column to win. We expect that the races where the Teals are represented will be hard fought this time. We've seen that throughout the campaign. I think it's possible that they could grow their numbers as well.
Well, and, Tom, thinking about the United States, when people are not happy with the main candidates, they tend to stay home on election day. In last year's U.S. election, almost 40% of eligible voters didn't vote, which is a huge amount of people. Now, that's not an option in Australia because voting is compulsory there. The fact that there are multiple options. Does that have a kind of moderating effect in Australian politics?
It definitely does. It means that the parties mostly stick to the centre political ground. They don't have to appeal to the fringes of politics in a way that they might have to if we didn't have compulsory voting. And it also means there's a little bit more stability. We broadly know what kind of voters are moving in the undecided camps, where they're going. I think also it means that we probably spend less in our politics than countries like the United States. Our election campaigns are not funded by, multi-million-dollar donations by rich listers up and down the country. We're proud of our compulsory voting. Some people don't think it's the right legal setting for civil debate, but it does have a good effect in the way elections are run and people paying attention to their civic responsibility.
Given the divisiveness that we are currently seeing in American politics, I think there's something for American politicians and voters to learn from there. So with all of that being said, Tom, what do you think is the most likely outcome for tomorrow?
All of the polling in the past few weeks have suggested that Labor has a better position going into Saturday's election. I think they will struggle to have a parliamentary majority after the poll. Their numbers are very slim at the moment, and usually first-term governments seeking re-election go backwards in our system. So I think a minority parliament with Labor holding the most seats is a strong possibility. I'm a little bit cautious in making predictions, but if you look at the polling, if you look at the kind of vibe of what's happening, it looks like Labor is in a better position going into Saturday's election.
Albo. It looks like Albo might win the race here, but we don't know yet. And so we know that the last time that Australians voted as a nation was in 2023 on a referendum to recognize Indigenous Australians in the Constitution and give them a greater political voice in Parliament. Now, that was ultimately rejected, thanks in part to Dutton and the opposition campaigning against it. I know the result was seen as a big blow for progressive Australians and the Albanese government, which pushed for it. So in that context, if Dutton did manage somehow to win tomorrow, what would it signal about how Australia may have shifted?
It would be a shift to the right. It would reinforce the result of the referendum, as you describe. 60% of voters said no to that. Referendums are difficult to pass in Australia, but that was a really thumping defeat. We have a system where a majority of the states have to vote yes as well as the popular vote, and none of the states did vote yes. Dutton was seen as campaigning very effectively for the no vote and was really one of the leaders of that vote, and it gave him a real political boost, and it took the wind out of Labor's sails politically as well. If he does win on Saturday, I think that will be seen as the real turning point for Labor and the situation that they weren't able to pull themselves out of. But equally, if Dutton falls short, I think you could make the argument that the victory that they secured in that referendum could have been overinterpreted and might have given them too much confidence about a possible right-leaning vote in Australia.
Well, we'll have to see what happens, and we'll be following the elections and hope that you get some sleep between now and election day, because I know you have a lot of work ahead.
Not long to wait now. We'll know the result pretty soon.
And that's The Take. Now, we want to hear from you. What stories do you want to see next on the show? Let us know in the comments below what you'd like us to cover, because your feedback helps shape future episodes. So don't be shy.